Come along as I DIY some bedroom furniture. I had bought a bedroom set before going to college, and I repainted everything. When I moved in with my boyfriend Jason, I DIY'd it and kind of stripped it down and repainted it a beautiful chalk blue and kind of did a wood-esque stain on the top. We have been using these pieces for a couple of years now, and I decided I wanted to try and find a couple more pieces to add to make it look like a full set of a tall dresser, a chest of drawers, and 2 nightstands. So I was able to find a chest of drawers and another nightstand at my local thrift store. I spent $65 for both pieces as kind of a mismatched set, but my plan is to repaint them, give them a facelift, and make it look as if they came as a 4-piece set with the 2 nightstands and the 2 dressers. I was really pleased with how the first 2 pieces turned out once I had completed the DIY project, so I knew going into things this time around I wanted to try and use all the same products since they were tried and true and seemed to work really well for me. One thing I do want to mention is with this paint stripper, it is a 2-minute advanced gel stripper. They had a liquid version, but I had success with the gel in the past, so I wanted to use it again. For me, it has helped to apply this gel in a really thick layer. I ended up just using an old Tupperware container to kind of pour the gel into it, and then I did end up just dumping it right on the dresser top here. But like I said, a really thick layer seemed to work really well for me to try and penetrate through as much paint as possible to make it 10 times easier to scrape it off. I used the paint stripper to strip the top of this dresser, but I decided I would just sand down the rest of the surfaces and repaint them. For the drawers, I did try and strip most of the paint off of those plastic embellishments, that fancy little piece right on the front of the drawer. And I did use it to strip the rest of the previous paint off of the bulk of the drawer. I took some time to flatten out the nails on the embellishments on the dresser drawers. Once I started to strip the paint and sand things down and try and get a smooth, clean surface to paint and stain over, the nails became exposed and sharp. So I just used a hammer and flattened everything the best I could, gave things a quick sand to try and get the smoothest surface as possible. I've been having an internal debate with myself on how I want to finish out these drawers for the dresser. I am going to be painting the plastic embellishment, the chalk blue that I had painted on the base, the majority of the dresser that I had done previously, but I'm not really sure if I want to try and stain the inside of the embellishment there where the handle would go, or if I want to paint that chalk blue as well. I do plan to stain the majority of the drawer, so all of the drawers are going to be stained to try and look like a wood stain as best as I can using the same technique that I used the last time, but I'm not sure how I want to finish out the inside of that little embellishment quite yet. I went back and forth between the paint stripping, the scraping, the wiping down, and the sanding. That whole process probably 3 or 4 times on all of the pieces and the drawers that I had purchased. I was just having a really difficult time cleaning out and around these embellishments to make it really nice and smooth and look really clean cut. I do not have the skill level when it comes to doing projects like this to take everything down to the bare bones, get it down, and completely start over. So I did my best at getting everything to a point where I thought I could get good coverage with the stain and the paint. These pieces were repainted once, if not twice, before they became mine, so I really just wanted to give them a nice facelift and make them my style. I also know that this was not anything that was going to be graded, so I put as much effort into it as I wanted to make it my own, but I'm not trying to win any medals here, not by any means. With the previous project, I was able to strip and sand down to bare wood on the drawers and most of the surface of the dresser. But this time around, it was not working as well for me. You can see that the drawers still look kind of white and patchy, and the surface underneath was not, it didn't feel the same as like the sides of the drawer. That wood feels different than the wood that was on the face of the drawer. So I wasn't 100% sure how it was going to stain or how the paint was going to hold to those plastic embellishments. Stripping paint is a super satisfying thing to do, and it was easily one of my favorite parts of this project. I did have to repeat the paint stripping process on the dresser top a couple of different times, just because the stripper, I didn't apply it in a thick enough layer, and so it couldn't completely penetrate through all of that super gummy paint. You can see how kind of discolored the top was. So it took me a little bit to get everything off of the top, but once I did, I was able to kind of dig around the edge of the dresser top as well to try and get out as much paint as possible so I can have a smooth kind of bare surface to stain. I know that everybody has their own style and way to go about DIYing and doing certain home improvement or craft projects, but I just went with everything that was tried and true from the first time around. I'm not 100% sure if I really needed to scrape the paint off like I did around the edge of the dresser top, but I figured I would be able to get a better wood look if I tried to get it down to as bare of wood as I could in comparison to these drawers that definitely look a lot rougher. I mentioned that I was having a hard time with trying to clean off these embellishments. You can see as I'm scraping the paint off, it's like a plastic yellow piece that's nailed into the face of the drawer. I did my best to strip the paint, scrape it with a flat-headed screwdriver. I had a really small one that I was able to go in and around all of the grooves with. And then I decided to go ahead and try using some steel wool to scrape off a bit more paint, and that seemed to work really well. I decided after I did that a few times that I would give things one more quick sand and call it good, consider it prepped and ready for staining and painting. Right now, we are renting the house that we live in, and so there's only so much that you can really do when it comes to interior design and kind of setting up your furniture, making it your own. So I'm super excited and really looking forward to seeing what I can do with these pieces and how I can style a master bedroom with them when we are off to bigger and better things. With that being said, I do not plan on getting rid of this bedroom set anytime soon, and I've already had ideas down the road using this dresser as a changing table in a nursery and then possibly passing it down to children and they can grow up with it. I worked back and forth between the dresser, the nightstand, and the drawers because I didn't want to get too overwhelmed and not be super excited about this project if things were not going how I expected them to go. I completed this DIY project for a grand total of $148.89. I spent about $65 or so on the pieces themselves, the dresser and the nightstand, but I think I spent around $83.89 or so on some supplies and tools that I needed. I had leftover paint and stain from the original set. I ended up needing to buy 5 of those like 97-cent cheap paintbrushes, bought a $12 roller kit that I actually ended up not using. I had to purchase some sanding blocks. Splurge that I really had to do with this project is buying the hardware. The hardware saga is coming up in a few minutes. I know things are looking rough right now. This paint is pretty thick, but it dries really thin and chalky because it is a chalk paint. So I knew I was going to have to do multiple coats on all of the areas that I use this paint. So I just put a rough coat on both the nightstand and the drawer to the nightstand, and then the next day I went ahead and I gave everything a second coat, and it is definitely looking a lot better. I noticed that the dresser rails were a bit loose, so I went ahead and I tightened all of those up before I gave everything its first coat of paint. And I did decide to paint inside the drawer a bit just to cover up the white paint that was painted in there previously. I had gone to our local hardware store to find the knobs or the drawer pulls that match what I already have in the other 2 pieces in the bedroom, but I'm not sure if these have a special cut. None of them seemed to match up when I tried to find a new style and a different kind of aesthetic for the pull on the drawers. So there's a picture or some footage somewhere where you can see these are the old pulls. So these ones were on all of the dresser drawers, all of the smaller pulls, and then there are 2 larger ones that go on the 2 nightstand drawers. Center to center measurements on the dresser drawer was 2.5 inches and 4.25 on the nightstand. I had bought the previous hardware from Menards, so I went ahead and I looked on their website, and they had the matching hardware, but not in the correct size that I needed. So I did end up ordering what I needed off of good old Amazon, and I ended up spray painting it. And I got 4 of the dresser drawers stained. 1 of the nightstand drawers stained. I did the top of the nightstand. So still looking for hardware. Very weird measurements. My local store, the hardware store that I went to find handles that matched the other ones I've done, they're not the same size, and they don't have the same size. So everything is going to look a little bit different. We will see. We're almost there. It took me about 2 or 3 days to completely feel like I finished staining and giving things the look that I wanted. I also don't know if you're supposed to really stain things over that many days. Again, I'm not an expert. I am not trying to win any medals. That's just it wasn't giving me the look that I wanted, so if I looked at it the next day and I felt that it needed to be a bit darker, a bit thicker, I just filled it in. And I probably ended up using the stain more like paint than stain, but things turned out really good and I am loving it. I really liked the way that the stain looked inside of the plastic embellishment here, but it was really hard to replicate that technique or that look on the mass majority of the drawer. When I would wipe off the stain, it made dark edging around the embellishment, and I thought that looked kind of cool. So I got a little messy and a little abstract with doing the staining on the drawers and decided I probably wasn't going to be able to have things look as washed out as I would like. So it looks a little bit darker. I had to rotate the nightstand because I realized I was getting a little wild with my stain painting and I was putting splatters on the side. So I did have to go back and repaint in a few spots and touch things up on both the nightstand and the dresser because I was a little wild. and stained the drawers, I stained the inside of all of the plastic embellishments, and that looked pretty good, and it kind of gave a darkened edge because I wasn't able to keep it as clean while staining, which was fine because I liked how it looked. So then I went ahead and I stained 4 of the drawers. I realized I could have used a wider brush to do the top of this nightstand because it would have made it a lot faster, but I had used this paintbrush to do the drawers, so I decided I would just continue using it and I wouldn't end up with another one full of stain. Made some finishing touches on the dresser. I had to go ahead and paint the inside of where the drawers sit because you could still see some of the wood and some of the old white paint. I thought I had painted in far enough when I painted the first couple times, got the first couple coats on, but I realized I needed a bit more coverage. These are what the drawers are looking like complete. Once the stain dried, I did end up going back with the chalk paint and really cleaning up that embellishment. I will have to touch up some of the blue paint around the edges again. As I was staining, it kind of spread and bled a little bit, so I will take care of all of that. But we are just about done. I did a little bit of touch-up stain on the drawers just now, and I did go ahead and paint the inside of where the drawers sit because you could still see some of the wood and some of the old white paint. I thought I had painted in far enough when I painted the first couple times, got the first couple coats on. This project has been a few months in the making. I bought these pieces back in March and I haven't been able to get around to them until this past month. So I worked on it all throughout June, some days after work, some days on the weekend, whenever I had time. And I'm excited to say that this project is done. These pieces are inside. They are filled with clothes. We are using them and we are loving them. This closet is like Narnia and you just disappear trying to reach anything that's in the back. But I really wanted to utilize the bottom of the closet now that we had more storage outside of the closet. So I went ahead and I moved all of my clothes up to the top. And this is the beauty herself in all of her glory. There is the old nightstand with the new dresser. I am absolutely loving it. Thanks for watching.